Hi everyone, we're Mimicker, here to introduce all kinds of knowledge, even the stuff we didn't know about.
That's right.
Last week, we discussed the issue of elderly drivers. This time, let's talk about pedestrian issues in Taiwan.
A really critical topic.
Absolutely. We're jumping straight into what is, well, arguably one of the most critical public safety issues in Taiwan today. I mean, for decades, locals knew the roads were dangerous, didn't they?
Oh, definitely. It was common knowledge, almost accepted.
But it took something specific, a 2022 CNN report, to really blow it up internationally. That report officially labeled Taiwan's traffic environment a pedestrian hell.
Yeah, and what's fascinating about that label, that specific phrase, is the impact it had. You know, for years, civic groups here had been saying the same things, making the same warnings.
Right, trying to get attention.
Exactly. But the CNN report, coming from a major international news source, it acted almost like this external authoritative certification.
Yeah.
Suddenly it wasn't just, a tough local problem.
It became a national image crisis.
Precisely. And then you saw international travel advisories picking up on it, like the one from Switzerland that explicitly called driving in Taiwan aggressive. That kind of external pressure, it gave crucial political leverage to the reform movements that had been fighting for years.
And that leverage is so necessary because we aren't talking about minor bumps or frustrations here. We're talking about actual lives lost. Our mission, really, in this deep dive is to try and synthesize the hard numbers, the cultural context.
The institutional failures.
Right, and also look at the international blueprints that are out there in our sources just to understand how we might fix this system.
Because this challenge, it really is systemic. We can't just point fingers at individual drivers, though that happens.
Yeah.
We have to examine the entire structure, road design, how licenses are issued, the cultural norms, everything that created this hell.
Okay, let's start with the really sobering reality then, the numbers. In 2023 alone, nearly 400 pedestrians lost their lives on the roads.
Really 400.
That's just staggering. Think about it. It averages out to one pedestrian death every single day.
Every single day. And they're the second largest victim group after motorcycle riders who face their own huge set of risks.
When you lay out numbers like that, the immediate question that pops up is, well, who is responsible? Because there's this deeply ingrained cultural myth, isn't there, always blaming the person walking.
Oh, absolutely. The narrative is often, the pedestrian wasn't paying attention, or they jaywalked, or they were on their phone. It shifts the blame.
But the data tells a completely different story.
It really does. There was an analysis by the National Police Agency, the NPA, and it just refutes that blame the pedestrian idea entirely. Get this. In fatal pedestrian accidents, the pedestrian was categorized as the non-primary party, basically the victim, a shocking 71.07% of the time.
71%. Wow. That figure just immediately clarifies the core problem, doesn't it?
It crystallizes it. The overwhelming factor is driver behavior. Speeding, not paying attention, and critically, failure to yield the right of way. The person operating the vehicle is primarily at fault in the vast majority of these fatal incidents.
So the narrative is completely backward.
Completely. And if we drill down into who is dying, the indictment of the system becomes even sharper, I think. The most vulnerable group by far, seniors, those aged 65 and over. They account for over 40% of all pedestrian fatalities.
Over 40%.
And it gets worse. If you look specifically at those aged 75 and above, they account for a staggering 43.85% of all pedestrian deaths.
That level of casualty among the elderly is just horrific. It feels like the system is almost actively targeting them, even if that's not the intention. But what specific failures allow this? Is it just about slower reaction times, or is it more?
It's absolutely a systemic design failure. This high death rate among seniors is a direct indictment of the system's underlying philosophy, how it's built. A functional, safe system must account for the natural decline in mobility and reaction time. That's the principle of human vulnerability. It needs built-in safety features, redundancies, things like refuge islands in the middle of wide roads, longer countdown timers at crossings, accessible ramps, not just stairs. The fact that elderly people die at this rate proves our current infrastructure is designed pretty much only for the young and agile. It essentially penalizes those who need protection the most.
So if the data is this clear about driver assault and the system design is failing the most vulnerable, why hasn't the culture shifted? Let's move from the numbers to the sort of underlying psychology and culture. Our sources keep mentioning this deeply ingrained car-centric mindset.
Yes, that's fundamental. Roads are widely viewed as the exclusive or at least primary domain of vehicles. The whole structure, the way traffic signals are timed, the width of lanes, it's all optimized for vehicle flow efficiency, for speed, for volume.
And pedestrians are just an obstacle.
Pretty much. They're seen as an unwanted obstruction, a momentary delay, not as legitimate road users with equal rights to be there.
That explains so much about why the failure to yield is so common. It's not just seen as breaking a rule, it's almost like an expected part of the road hierarchy.
Exactly. And you really see the difference when you compare it internationally. Think about, say, the U.S. law regarding school buses. When that bus stops and the stop sign comes out, all traffic, often in both directions, must stop. It's a deeply ingrained cultural norm, prioritizing child safety.
Right, you don't mess with that.
You don't.
Yeah.
But in Taiwan, we routinely see vehicles just swerving around stopped buses to keep their momentum going. It reveals this collective, dangerous disregard for what should be designated safety zones.
And that disregard sometimes spills over into actual hostility. Let's talk about the psychology here for a minute. The issue of road rage. There was a survey cited finding that 60% of Taiwanese drivers report significant stress just from dealing with other aggressive drivers. It creates this constant high-tension environment.
Yeah, and this isn't just about people having a bad day or being impatient. Medical experts are increasingly looking at aggressive driving as a public health issue. Some of our sources noted it's often a manifestation of something called intermittent explosive disorder, or IED.
IED.
Yeah. Studies suggest it affects roughly 3% of the driving population.
3% might sound small, but when you think about the millions of drivers on the road, that's actually a massive pool of potentially high-risk behavior, isn't it?
It's a huge number of individuals. And for someone with IED, their aggressive reaction isn't really a rational choice. It's often impulsive, uncontrollable. Medically, it's sometimes described as the brain's brakes being broken. It can be linked to things like an overactive amygdala or issues with serotonin regulation.
So this means that the usual ways of dealing with bad driving, like hitting people with high fines, might not actually work very well for these individuals because it's rooted in impulse, not a logical calculation of risk versus reward.
It absolutely limits the effectiveness of just using fines or points. We really need a more interdisciplinary approach. It suggests we should be thinking about incorporating mental health screenings, maybe for high-risk repeat offenders during license renewal, and ensuring there are clear pathways to treatment integrated into the system.
So moving beyond just punishment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Shifting from seeing road rage solely as a legal violation to understanding it, in some cases, as needing a critical health intervention.
Okay, speaking of intervention points, let's pivot to the institutional failures, particularly around driver competence. We have to talk about the licensing system. For years, Taiwan's licensing has had this nickname, the license for a chicken leg system.
Yeah, implying it's super easy to get, almost a giveaway.
And the problem isn't just the nickname, right? The National Audit Office has formally flagged this ease of licensing as a key factor contributing to high casualty rates.
That's right. And the international comparisons really throw into sharp relief just how inadequate the standard is.
They are pretty shocking. Taiwan's standard motorcycle test route is less than 400 meters long. 400 meters. It basically just focuses on low-speed mechanical maneuvers like balancing in a completely closed artificial course. It feels totally detached from real-world driving hazards.
Totally. Now contrast that with Japan. Their motorcycle test route is 1.5 kilometers long. It simulates mixed traffic conditions, requires emergency stops, complex merging. Our sources mention that applicants in Japan who don't go through a formal driving school, they often fail 15 times, maybe more, before they manage to pass.
15 times. That really shows the difference between just testing if you can operate the machine versus testing if you have real-world competence and hazard awareness.
Exactly. But the institutional failure doesn't even stop there. Once you pass that minimal test in Taiwan, that license document is essentially yours for life. They abolished periodic renewal for regular car and motorcycle licenses.
For life. No retesting, no updates.
Pretty much. And this detail apparently astonished international observers.
Yeah.
There's an anecdote about a Japanese police officer looking at the system who reportedly asked, well, how are people supposed to review and update their knowledge of traffic laws if there are no mandatory lectures or renewals?
That's a very good question.
It reveals the core philosophical flaw, doesn't it? The system certifies a one-time qualification, maybe achieved decades ago, rather than requiring continuous competence to navigate roads safely as laws change and skills might deteriorate.
And that lack of institutional oversight seems compounded by another gap. The absence of a single, comprehensive, basic act for road traffic safety.
Precisely. We lack that unifying legislative umbrella, something to establish people first, or maybe vulnerable road user first, as the highest guiding principle across all infrastructure planning and policy decisions. Right now, the standards are scattered across different regulations, often contradictory.
Which is why civic groups are pushing so hard for legally binding road design standards, right?
Yeah. Exactly. They want to stop local governments from constantly sacrificing safe pedestrian spaces, like making sidewalks narrower or removing them altogether just to squeeze in another lane for cars or improve perceived traffic flow.
Okay, so that brings us directly to the physical reality of walking in Taiwan, the urban planning failures. Pedestrians face what's been called a threefold failure with sidewalks. Not enough of them. The ones that exist are often unsuitable, and they lack continuity. They just end.
Yeah, it's not just about availability, it's about usability.
Yeah.
And this is where we have to be really careful with misleading statistics. The official metric often used is coverage rate, which just measures the total length of sidewalks that technically exist. Nationwide, it claims about 42% coverage.
Which doesn't... Oh, okay, maybe. Not great, but okay.
But that metric is almost useless on the ground. It's a classic case of the tyranny of indicators. It sounds reasonable until you actually walk there and realize those covered sections are blocked by giant utility boxes, or they're ridiculously narrow, or they're completely clogged with parked scooters and bikes.
So they exist on paper, but you can't actually use them safely.
Exactly. Take Chiayi City, which was cited as an example. It reports a 35.53% sidewalk coverage rate, but then you look at its suitability rate, the percentage that's actually safe and functional, wide enough unobstructed, it's only 52.03%.
So nearly half of the sidewalks they do have are basically substandard or non-functional.
Right, which forces pedestrians back out into the vehicle lane, directly into danger.
And what's really fascinating and kind of insidious is how the road design itself seems to actively encourage dangerous driving, even among drivers who aren't necessarily aggressive or suffering from IED.
That's what some call structural violence. The design itself creates danger. For instance, excessively wide vehicle lanes. Psychologically, they signal to the driver, hey, it's safe to go faster here. There's more room for error, so speed creeps up.
And ironically, that often contributes to the induced demand effect, right? You build wider roads thinking you'll relieve congestion.
But you actually just encourage more people to drive or drive longer distances, ultimately worsening congestion and making the road even more lethal for anyone not in a car.
And let's not forget the details at intersections. Crosswalks are often placed right up against the corner.
Yeah, flush with the corner, which dramatically increases the lethal blind spots, especially for large vehicles like trucks and buses making turns. The driver simply cannot see a pedestrian who might be starting to cross right there.
Plus, there's a real lack of traffic calming measures in many areas. Things like speed humps or chicanes, those S-curves, or even just raised crosswalks in residential zones.
Right. The absence of these features reinforces the dangerous idea that the street is primarily a high-speed corridor for vehicles, even where children might be playing or seniors are trying to cross to the market. The design itself effectively penalizes walking and rewards driving fast.
Okay, so we've laid out a pretty bleak picture. Institutional failures, cultural inertia, lethal infrastructure design. But the good news, maybe, is that the solutions aren't a mystery. They're well-documented, globally tested. We don't need to reinvent the wheel, maybe just import it.
That's a good way to put it. We need to adopt proven strategies. Let's look at some of those international blueprints, starting with the philosophical shift, the kind of operating system upgrade, Sweden's Vision Zero.
Vision Zero, we hear that term a lot now. What's the core idea?
Introduced back in the 1990s, it's truly revolutionary because it starts from an ethical imperative. Human life and health are paramount. The only acceptable goal for a transport system is zero fatalities or serious injuries. Zero.
And the key shift is about responsibility, isn't it?
Absolutely fundamental. Instead of blaming the individual road user for making a mistake, because humans will make mistakes, Vision Zero blames the system for allowing that mistake to become fatal or catastrophic.
So the onus is on the system designers.
Ultimately, yes. They are responsible for designing roads, vehicles, and regulations that accommodate foreseeable human error. So when someone inevitably makes a mistake, steps off a curb too early, misjudges speed, gets distracted for a second, that mistake doesn't result in death or life-changing injury. Life comes first.
Okay, so if Vision Zero is the philosophical OS, then what's the hardware? Our sources mentioned the Dutch concept of the Woonerf, or living street.
Right. The WUNF is where engineering actively compels safer behavior. It's about designing spaces where cars are guests, not kings.
How does that work in practice?
It uses traffic calming engineering techniques to make slow, careful driving the most natural and comfortable option. They don't just rely on speed limit signs, which people often ignore. They use physical tools.
Like,
Things like S-shaped curves or chicanes that physically prevent drivers from building up speed in a straight line, narrowing the lanes, changing the pavement material, maybe switching from smooth asphalt in the vehicle path to rougher cobblestones or bricks in shared areas, to physically signal to drivers, you're entering a different kind of space. Slow down, be alert.
making it feel different physically.
Exactly. Compelling the behavior through design.
All right, OS, hardware. What about the software? Japan gives us KYT, hazard prediction training. What's that about?
KYT, or Kiken Yosoku training, moves road safety from just passive rule following, don't speed, stop at red lights, to proactive risk management. It's about training the brain.
How so?
KYT is powerful because it trains all road users, drivers, cyclists, even pedestrians, in what they call kamoshiranai unten, or kamoshiranai hoko. Roughly translated, it means driving or walking with the thought that something might happen.
Anticipating danger.
Precisely. It's an active mental process. Training involves looking at traffic scenarios and actively predicting potential hazards. For example, seeing a stopped bus and consciously thinking a child might run out from behind it, or seeing a car waiting to turn left and thinking they might not see me on my bike.
So you're mentally rehearsing potential problems.
Yes. And by mentally rehearsing these dangers, road users significantly shorten their reaction time if the danger actually occurs. They become proactive managers of risk, not just reactive rule followers.
Okay, so putting it all together, we have this potentially powerful, holistic approach. Vision Zero providing the ethical framework and goal, the OS. Wooner-style engineering providing the physical environment that encourages safety, the hardware, and KYT providing the mental skills for proactive hazard awareness, the software.
Exactly. And the encouraging thing is the civic momentum here in Taiwan is demanding exactly this kind of synthesis. That massive Return the Roads to the People protest back in August 2023 wasn't just complaining. They put forth 5 clear systemic demands.
And those demands align with these models.
Perfectly. They called for fundamental infrastructure improvements based on safety, comprehensive reform of the licensing system, adopting Vision Zero principles nationally, and crucially, passing the necessary legislation like the Basic Act and binding design standards. It's all there.
Okay, so this gives us a pretty clear reform blueprint. If we were to break it down, what are the essential immediate actions needed? Short-term fixes.
In the short term, say the next 12 to 18 months, 2 things are critical.
Yeah.
First, enforcement. We need sustained, routine, strict nationwide enforcement against the most dangerous violations, especially failure to yield to pedestrians. We have to end the ineffective campaign-style police action that pops up for a few weeks and then disappears. It needs to be constant.
Make it the norm, not a special event.
Exactly. Second, education and quick infrastructure fixes. Launch broad public awareness campaigns based on KYT principles. Teach people how to anticipate hazards, and simultaneously use tactical urbanism.
Tactical urbanism, right? That's using the low-cost reversible stuff like paint, temporary bollards, cones.
Yes. Use those tools to quickly reconfigure dangerous intersections, test out refuge islands, narrow lanes temporarily. It allows you to make immediate safety improvements while you plan for the more permanent, concrete changes. It's a fast remedy.
Okay, so that's short term. What about the medium-term goals, looking maybe 3 to 5 years out?
For the medium term, it's all about building that solid institutional foundation. That means legislation. Finally, passing that comprehensive Basic Act for road traffic safety and making those road design standards legally binding so safety isn't traded away for traffic flow.
Locking in the principles.
Right. And then, the big one, tackling the licensing system head-on. That likely means moving towards mandatory driving school attendance before testing, like in many other countries, and establishing a system for periodic license renewal that includes required retraining or knowledge updates, mirroring models like Japan's.
That sounds like a huge political challenge, especially the license renewal.
Well, absolutely. This kind of transformation, especially pushing back against the entrenched car-centric culture and demanding things like license renewals or stricter enforcement, will undoubtedly face resistance. People will complain about cost, about convenience.
But what's the alternative?
Well, that's the fundamental point, isn't it? The crisis we see today stems from solvable systemic problems. It's the result of decades of decisions that prioritize vehicle speed and efficiency over basic human safety. The cost of inaction, measured in hundreds of preventable deaths every year, especially among our elders and children, massively exceeds the cost or inconvenience of reform.
It's about reframing the cost.
Exactly. Ultimately, the solution isn't about somehow changing everyone's personality overnight. It's about the government fulfilling the most basic promise of a modern developed society, creating a safe environment, ensuring a safe way home for every single citizen, young or old, fast or slow, agile or needing support. That requires a fundamental shift, prioritizing human safety above all else. And frankly, that transformation is long, long overdue.
A powerful point to end on. Thanks for tuning into this deep dive. If you enjoyed our content, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and turn on the notification bell.